Albert Einstein, sticking out his tongue. That photo of Einstein sticking out his tongue is iconic. It's a fun reminder that even a brilliant scientist like him could be playful and have a sense of humor. The story behind the photo is interesting too. Einstein was apparently tired of photographers asking him to smile on his 72nd birthday, so he stuck his tongue out in a bit of rebellion. Luckily, the photographer captured the moment, and it turned into one of the most famous pictures of Einstein ever taken. Construction workers having lunch atop a skyscraper. The captivating photo, Lunch Atop a Skyscraper, isn't quite what it seems. While it depicts ironworkers nonchalantly perched on a girder, enjoying their lunch break high above the New York City streetscape, the image was actually staged in 1932 as part of a promotional push for Rockefeller Center. This doesn't diminish the inherent bravery of these construction workers who toiled hundreds of feet in the air to build these magnificent skyscrapers. Adding to the photo's intrigue, the identities of most of the workers remain shrouded in mystery, making them anonymous heroes of a bygone era, building the Golden Gate Bridge. While a 1937 photo of Golden Gate Bridge construction shows workers scaling the structure without harnesses, it reflects different safety practices of the era. Safety nets, a first for such a large project, were used extensively to significantly reduce worker deaths. Though lacking harnesses, the bridge builders were skilled, and the project a success story in worker safety for its time. Women working at a shipyard during World War II. The photo captures women working in a shipyard during World War II. This wasn't just replacing absent men, but a large-scale entry of women into industrial jobs. They took on essential roles like welding and operating machinery, helping build ships crucial to the war effort. This moment challenged traditional gender roles and paved the way for more workplace equality. Fashionable swimwear in the early 1900s. Early 1900s beach fashion was all about modesty. Forget bikinis. Women wore full-body swimsuits made of thick, heavy fabrics like wool or cotton. These cumbersome garments covered wrists, ankles, and sometimes even had collars and hats. Sun protection came from accessories like stockings, shoes, and hats. Thankfully, swimwear evolved towards more practical and revealing styles by the 1920s. A vacuum cleaner from the early 1900s. The early 1900s was a time of great innovation for the vacuum cleaner. While the machines we use today are compact and lightweight, the early models were quite different. One of the earliest types of vacuum cleaners was the horse-drawn variety. These machines were massive and cumbersome, consisting of a large engine mounted on a horse-drawn cart. A long hose would be snaked into buildings, and the vacuum would suck up dirt and dust from carpets and upholstery, a hot air balloon race in the early 1900s. Hot air balloon races were indeed a popular sport in the early 1900s, attracting enthusiastic crowds and daring aeronauts. One of the most famous hot air balloon races of the era was the Gordon Bennett Cup, which began in 1906. This international competition saw balloonists from around the world vying for glory by traveling the farthest distance. The balloons were a marvel of engineering for the time, with brightly colored envelopes made of silk or cotton and wicker baskets for the pilots. Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart was a true aviation icon and played a pivotal role in both aviation history and women's rights. She tragically disappeared in 1937 while attempting to circumnavigate the globe. There are many theories surrounding her disappearance, but it remains a mystery to this day. However, there are many well-documented photographs of Amelia Earhart from throughout her career, including many from 1937. Photo of Amelia Earhart confidently sitting in the cockpit of her Lockheed Electra aircraft, the plane she used for her fateful attempt. The Wright brothers' first flight. The Wright Flyer was a biplane design with a lightweight gasoline engine and a unique wing warping mechanism for control. On that historic day, they made 4 successful flights, with the farthest lasting for 59 seconds and covering 260 meters. The Wright brothers' first flight wasn't widely publicized at first, but it marked the beginning of the aviation age. Their innovative design principles laid the foundation for all modern fixed-wing aircraft, building the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower was built for the 1889 World's Fair in Paris and was initially controversial for its design. However, it quickly became a beloved landmark and a symbol of France. The construction itself was a remarkable feat, completed in just over 2 years by a workforce of 1,200 men. Workers employed innovative techniques and safety precautions for the time to ascend the ever-growing structure. The Eiffel Tower remains an impressive testament to human ingenuity and engineering. Fairbanks and Chaplin, Wall Street Rally in 1918. The famous 1918 photo you described captures silent film stars Charlie Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks participating in a Wall Street rally to sell Liberty bonds during World War I. The rally likely took place near the New York Times offices and aimed to raise money for the war effort. The most iconic image shows Chaplin on Fairbanks' shoulders, energizing the crowd. This photo became a symbol of American patriotism and celebrity endorsement of the war. The Great Depression. This 1934 photo by Dorothea Lange captures the stark realities of the Great Depression with a haunting image of a migrant mother and her children. The Dust Bowl, a period of severe drought that ravaged the Great Plains states from 1928 to 1939, displaced many farmers who were forced to migrate west in search of work. Lange captured the struggles of these migrant workers and their families, many of whom lived in poverty and despair. Her photographs helped to raise public awareness of the human cost of the Depression and led to increased government support for the poor and unemployed. Mrs. Ellery with Men and Boys, Congo. Mrs. Ellery with Men and Boys, Congo, 1910 to 1915. It is a black and white lantern slide showing a female missionary, possibly Mrs. Ellery, standing with a group of Congolese men and boys. The men and boys are all holding open Bibles. The image is part of a collection generated by missionaries working for the Congo Bololo Mission. The Congo Bololo Mission was a Protestant mission founded in 1889 in what was then the Belgian Congo Free State. The mission's goal was to spread Christianity among the Congolese people. A dog wearing a gas mask during World War I. Dogs played a very important role during World War I, and their safety amid chemical warfare was a major concern. Here's a photograph from World War I showing a dog wearing a gas mask. These K9 gas masks were specifically designed for dogs' snouts and provided protection against toxic gases that were prevalent during the war. Given the critical tasks these dogs performed, protecting them became a necessity. Building the Panama Canal. Building the Panama Canal was a monumental task that required immense human effort and engineering innovation. Here's a black and white photo depicting the construction of the Panama Canal in the early 1900s. The canal's construction was a long and arduous process that spanned decades. The French first attempted to build it in the 1880s, but their efforts were plagued by disease, landslides, and financial difficulties. The United States took over the project in 1904 and completed it in 1914. Ormond Family Reunion 1912. The image is quite interesting. It appears to be a photograph of the Ormond family reunion that took place in 1912 at 1727 Hamilton Street. Unfortunately, beyond the photo itself, there isn't much public information available online about this specific reunion. However, it might be a good starting point for your own research into the Ormond family history. French racing cyclist Lisette Martin. Lisette Martin, also known as Amélie Le Gall, was a French cyclist who is considered the women's world champion in the sport in 1896. There is a famous photograph of her taken in that year, riding a gladiator bicycle. Le Gall began competing in France in exhibition contests to promote the new sport of cycling. In 1895, she raced in London, and in 1896, she defeated Scottish cyclist Clara Grace for the unofficial title of Women's World Champion. She also raced against men, including defeating Albert Champion. Le Gall continued to compete internationally until 1900. Statue of Liberty under construction. Meanwhile, in the United States, work began on the statue's pedestal in 1881. Designed by architect Richard Morris Hunt, the granite foundation was built on Bedloe's Island to provide a sturdy base for the massive statue. Funding for the pedestal's construction came entirely from private donations raised through a public campaign led by newspaper publisher Joseph Pulitzer, a Japanese tea ceremony in the early 1900s. Here's an image depicting a Japanese tea ceremony in the early 1900s. The tea ceremony is a highly ritualized way of preparing and drinking tea, and it is considered an important part of Japanese culture. The ceremony emphasizes aesthetics, respect, and harmony. The early 20th century saw the publishing of The Book of Tea by Okakura Kakuzo, which helped solidify the tea ceremony's significance in the cultural identity of Japan. The book describes the ceremony as a worship of the imperfect, as it is a tender attempt to accomplish something possible in this impossible thing we know as life. A fire truck from the early 1900s. Firefighting was a very different business back then. These horse-drawn fire trucks were the primary fire engines until the early 20th century, when motorized fire trucks began to take over. Horse-drawn fire trucks relied on a team of fast and well-trained horses to pull the engine to the fire scene. The firefighters would then man the pump, which was a hand-operated lever system that forced water through hoses to the fire. These fire trucks were slower and less powerful than modern fire trucks, but they were still an important tool for fighting fires in the early 1900s. Children play while mother works. A wartime photo from Naples in 1944 by Lieutenant Wayne Miller shows children playing in the foreground, seemingly carefree. Their worn clothes hint at the war's hardships. In the background, their mother works diligently, likely struggling to provide for the family. This powerful image captures the contrasting realities of war. The children's innocent play amidst the devastation and their mother's burden to rebuild their lives. New York and Brooklyn Bridge in 1883. In 1883, New York City witnessed the completion of a marvel of engineering, the Brooklyn Bridge. It wasn't just a bridge. It was a symbol of progress, ingenuity, and the growing importance of New York as a major metropolis. Designed by John A. Roebling, the Brooklyn Bridge connected the boroughs of Manhattan and Brooklyn across the East River. It was the first fixed crossing of the river and held the title of the longest suspension bridge in the world at the time of its opening. 3 suffragists casting votes in New York City. There seems to be a discrepancy. Unfortunately, women did not have the right to vote in New York City in 1883. Women's suffrage wasn't achieved in New York until 1917. In this photo depicts suffragists casting votes in New York City around 1917. The image typically features 3 well-dressed women standing at a polling station, likely a public building like a school or community center. They are dressed in fashionable clothing of the era, perhaps long coats and hats. One of the women is confidently placing her ballot into the ballot box. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, carving the Thanksgiving turkey. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was known for carrying on the tradition of carving the Thanksgiving turkey. He would often do this at the White House, but also famously carved turkeys at the Warm Springs Foundation, a polio treatment center. These photos typically depict FDR seated at the head of a Thanksgiving table, dressed in a suit or sweater vest, using a carving knife to slice a roasted turkey surrounded by guests and festive dishes. The Scopes Trial in 1925. The Scopes Trial of 1925 wasn't just a legal battle. It was a dramatic clash of ideologies captured forever in photographs. Imagine a cramped courtroom, likely in Dayton, Tennessee. The year is 1925, reflected in the clothing and furniture of the day. In the foreground, you might see John Scopes, the science teacher on trial for defying a Tennessee law that prohibited teaching evolution. Facing him across the aisle could be the lawyer representing the prosecution, the fiery William Jennings Bryan, and on Scope's side, the renowned defense attorney Clarence Darrow. Harvard 90 football team. It is actually called the Harvard 1890 football team, though, and the photo is a group portrait of the team members. The photograph was taken by Patch Brothers, a photography studio, in 1890, and is now part of the Library of Congress Prints and Photographs Division collection. The players wear long pants, long-sleeved shirts, and knee-high socks with their uniforms. Some players have leather helmets or caps, while others appear bareheaded. The photo seems to be taken outdoors, possibly on the Harvard University campus. Hindenburg disaster. The Hindenburg, a massive German passenger airship filled with flammable hydrogen, caught fire and exploded in 1937 while attempting to land in New Jersey. This tragic event, captured on newsreel and forever etched in history, resulted in 36 deaths and marked the end of the era for passenger airships. The cause of the disaster is debated, with theories centering around a hydrogen leak ignited by atmospheric electricity. The Vietnam Napalm Girl. In 1972, a single photograph captured the world's attention and forever altered the perception of the Vietnam War. Nick Utt's Pulitzer Prize-winning image, titled The Terror of War, depicts the harrowing reality of war for innocent civilians. The photo shows 9-year-old Phan Thi Kim Phuc running down a road, stripped bare and screaming in pain. Her body is seared by burns from a napalm attack, a horrifying testament to the indiscriminate cruelty of war. This image became an iconic symbol of the Vietnam War, exposing the devastating impact on civilians and sparking outrage around the globe. It remains a powerful reminder of the enduring human cost of war, even for the most innocent. The San Francisco earthquake and fire. The San Francisco earthquake and fire of 1906 was a horrific disaster that devastated the city. A powerful earthquake struck on April 18, 1906, followed by a series of fires that raged for days. The earthquake and fire destroyed over 80% of the city and left an estimated 3,000 people dead. The photo depicts the utter destruction caused by the earthquake and subsequent fires. Buildings are reduced to rubble and smoke fills the air. This image serves as a stark reminder of the immense power of nature and the importance of disaster preparedness. Mounted policemen watch a Vietnam War protest. This photo captures a pivotal moment in American history, the anti-Vietnam War movement gaining momentum. San Francisco, April 1967. The location is likely a major street, with San Francisco City Hall visible in the background. Mounted police officers sit tall on their horses, observing a large crowd of protesters marching by. Their presence symbolizes the authorities' attempt to maintain order during the demonstration. A vast sea of protesters streams down the street, likely carrying signs and chanting slogans against the war. Their numbers and energy convey the growing public opposition to the conflict. The Loch Ness Monster. The surgeon's photograph. This year saw the publication of the most famous image associated with Nessie, the surgeon's photograph. Taken by Dr. Robert Kenneth Wilson, it depicted a long neck emerging from the loch's surface. The photo, published in the Daily Mail, sparked a media frenzy and solidified the Loch Ness Monster's image in the public mind. The media attention surrounding the photo fueled public interest, leading to a surge in reported sightings throughout 1934. This further cemented the legend's status and made Loch Ness a hotspot for monster hunters.